about to tell you may challenge everything you thought about yourself. If you're here, it's not by accident. You were meant to hear this. You've been through battles that would have broken most people. You didn't just survive the fire. You made the fire question its purpose. Even the darkest forces had to step back when they saw what you endured and how you kept moving forward. Not because you fought with rage, but because you carried pain with power. You stayed loyal when you had every reason to walk away. You showed kindness when bitterness would have been easier. That kind of resilience isn't common. It's unstoppable. That's why even the enemy couldn't handle your soul. You weren't rejected because you were weak. You were rejected because your strength was too much. If this message hits something deep inside you, take a moment to hit that like button. Subscribe to help us reach 3,000 subscribers and leave a comment for them. Your voice matters, and you're not alone. There are moments when the world around you feels like a relentless furnace, scorching every ounce of hope until nothing remains but ash. But what if even hell itself, the very embodiment of suffering, hesitated to break you? You carried wounds so deep and pain so raw that even the darkest force recoiled. It wasn't because you were weak. It was because you were fiercely alive, bleeding out love and strength in ways that defied destruction. They saw you hurting, but you never let your suffering show the cracks. You endured in silence, like a warrior cloaked in invisible armor. You showed loyalty that refused to bend or break, even when the people you gave everything to turned their backs. You stayed where others fled. You forgave the unforgivable, sometimes to your own detriment. Yet, in that loyalty was an unshakable power, a force so potent that even the Prince of Lies himself dared not approach. Because to witness your pain and still fail to break you meant one thing. You were a force beyond manipulation, beyond cruelty. And in this dance of fire and blood, your resilience became a silent scream that echoed louder than any torment. The world could try to consume you, but you carried the flames without being consumed. When hell saw your bleeding heart, it flinched, not because you were fragile, but because you were formidable beyond its darkest imagination. Darkness doesn't just consume, it tries to corrupt. It feeds on despair, festers in brokenness, and thrives on surrender. But purity isn't the absence of scars. It's the relentless refusal to let those scars define you. You carried a purity not of innocence, but of raw, untamable spirit. You were a soul so unyielding, so clear in your truth, that the abyss itself could not drag you down into its endless pit. There is a misconception that purity means being untouched by pain, but real purity is forged in the fires of survival. It's about standing in the storm and not losing your humanity. You stayed true, even when everything screamed for you to lose faith, to give up hope. Your light wasn't a flicker, it was a blaze that illuminated even the darkest corners of your life, exposing the lies, the betrayal, and the shadows that tried to swallow you whole. And that's why darkness rejected you, not because you were naive or perfect, but because your strength was rooted in a kind of sacred fire, one that couldn't be doused by bitterness or cruelty. You were too fierce, too untamed, and too real. You were the pure force of survival itself. It's easy to mistake endurance for breaking, but the truth is far more cruel. You weren't shattered in a single moment of cruelty. Instead, they learned to siphon your energy slowly, like vultures circling a dying light. They took without giving back. They took your kindness, your loyalty, your forgiveness, all the things that made you uniquely you, and twisted them into chains that held you captive. You smiled through the pain, hid your anguish behind jokes and quiet nods, while inside, your soul was being quietly emptied. Each betrayal felt like a small cut, barely visible, but enough to bleed you dry over time. They didn't shatter you in a dramatic explosion. They wore you down in silence. Your patience was a trap, your mercy a weapon against you. But here's what they never understood. Your smile was not surrender. It was survival. You chose to endure not because you were weak, but because you were brave enough to carry the burden for others. And though they drained you, they never stole the fire that still burns inside you, waiting, always waiting, to be unleashed. When even the devil, master of manipulation and destruction, stepped back, it was a sign that your spirit was too untouchable, too resilient for his games. You bled for people who never lifted a finger to help. You endured betrayal that screamed for retaliation, but you stayed. Even when your very soul begged you to run, you held your ground. This kind of endurance is not weakness. It's a testament to your extraordinary strength. You lived in a world where giving up seemed easier, but you chose the harder path, the path of fierce loyalty, of endless forgiveness. And while the devil walked away, unable to bend you to his will, those around you kept testing your limits. You stayed long after you should have left, not out of submission, but because your heart believed in peace, in healing. But peace isn't silence. It isn't invisibility. And now, it's time to stand up and roar louder than the pain, louder than even the devil's retreat. People watched you. They learned from your suffering. They dissected your kindness and found ways to exploit it. You didn't just survive. You became a manual on how to break someone without breaking them outright. They knew exactly where to push, how to push, and when to push, all while you smiled and said nothing. It's a cruel kind of powerlessness, to be torn apart not by brute force, but by the slow, calculated erosion of your spirit. You were the perfect victim, forgiving, loyal, endlessly kind. They weaponized your empathy, your silence, your patience, turning your strengths into vulnerabilities. But what they don't realize is that blueprints can be rewritten. You have the power to destroy their map, to break the cycle. This isn't about being good anymore. It's about being fierce, about fighting back, not with violence, but with the force of your reclaimed power and unbreakable will. Kindness is often mistaken for weakness, but real kindness, the kind you embody, is a thunderstorm wrapped in a gentle breeze. It's so pure and fierce that it unsettles even the darkest souls. Demons aren't just scared of fire. They're terrified of a heart that won't turn cold, that keeps giving light in the darkest nights. Your kindness was a weapon, not in the way people wield cruelty, but in the way it refused to be extinguished. It confused those who expected you to break, to lash out, to become bitter. Instead, you stayed true, compassionate, and relentlessly forgiving, creating a fortress that even the devil feared to breach. Kindness like yours is rare and powerful. It shifts the balance of power without raising a fist. It's the silent rebellion that refuses to be broken, the untamed force that makes even the most sinister back away. Silence is powerful, but it can also be dangerous. You kept your pain and fury locked away, believing that strength was in quiet endurance. But your silence was misunderstood. It wasn't a shield. It was a welcome mat for those who wanted to walk all over you. They heard your silence as permission. They used your calm as a sign that you wouldn't fight back. They carved paths through your heart, thinking it was unguarded territory. But what they missed was the storm brewing beneath your quiet exterior, the fierce fire waiting for the moment to roar. Silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it's the heaviest burden of all. And now it's time to break that silence and show the world the depth of your strength, not in whispers, but in thunderous declaration. Pain is inevitable. It's a visitor in every life. But what made your suffering unique was not the wounds themselves, but the endless patience with which you bore them. You let hurt linger, believing time would heal what others harmed. You stayed in places that bruised your soul, hoping for change, hoping for peace. Your patience became a cage. You gave time for others to fix what they broke, but many never tried. Instead, they took advantage of your endurance, pushing boundaries, crossing lines you never imagined possible. Your quiet waiting was mistaken for weakness, when in truth, it was an act of incredible courage. But courage that was exploited. Healing requires more than patience. It requires action. It requires knowing when to walk away, when to fight, and when to reclaim your peace. Your patience is not a virtue to be exploited. It's a power to be wielded. The ultimate deceiver feared you. Imagine that. The king of manipulation, recognizing a soul too powerful to conquer. Satan's fear wasn't born from your flaws. It was born from your fierce integrity, your unwavering spirit, and the light you carried even when everything else was dark. But if such darkness feared you, why do the broken people around you not? Why do they continue to test your limits, to take advantage of your kindness, to treat your heart like a battlefield? Because unlike Satan, they don't understand the fire inside you. It's time to remind the world and yourself that your strength is not to be underestimated. It's time to live like the warrior you are, not the martyr they want you to be. You offered safety to those who left you burning. You gave your heart as a refuge for people who carried nothing but destruction inside. You sheltered them from storms, wiped their tears, and carried their burdens, even as they set your soul ablaze. There is a cruel irony in being the sanctuary for people who don't respect your walls. You held space for love and healing, but they brought only chaos. You were the calm in their storm, but they were the hurricane tearing through your peace. Your compassion was a gift, but it was also a battlefield. And now, it's time to stop being the shelter for those who choose to burn you. Your kindness deserves a safe home too. Loyalty is a beautiful thing, but only when it serves you as much as it serves others. You gave yourself to people who took and took, never giving back the love, respect, or kindness you poured out. You called it loyalty, but in reality, it was a slow erosion of your spirit. You stayed in toxic places under the guise of commitment. You forgave the unforgivable because you believed in people, in promises, in second chances. But loyalty should never come at the cost of your own well-being. True loyalty is a two-way street. It's about honoring yourself as fiercely as you honor others. And it's time you reclaimed that honor. Your heart was not a peaceful sanctuary. It was a battlefield. They saw the scars, the wounds, the tender places, and they attacked relentlessly. Your vulnerability became their playground, your love, their conquest. They fought wars in your soul, claiming territory with lies, betrayal, and deceit. Every smile you gave was a truce, every forgiveness a ceasefire. But they pushed forward, hungry for more. But battles can be won, and your heart, though battered, holds the power to rebuild, stronger, wiser, and more guarded than ever before. Kindness is not weakness, yet that's how many have treated yours. They dissected your generosity, your empathy, your willingness to forgive, and turned these qualities into weapons against you. They used your good nature as a lever to get what they wanted, without regard for your pain. You gave love freely, but they took it for granted. You opened doors, but they walked through without respect. You offered peace, but they brought war. It's time to redefine kindness, not as a vulnerability to be exploited, but as a power to be protected. Your kindness is your strength. Never forget that. You offered calm where there was chaos. You brought peace where there was conflict. You tried to heal where there was hurt, but what did you receive? Scars, emotional, mental, spiritual, left by those who never deserved the sanctuary of your heart. And the worst part, you allowed it. You tolerated their cruelty, excused their behavior, and silenced your pain to keep the peace. But peace, built on silence and sacrifice, is fragile. It shatters easily and leaves you alone in the ruins. True peace begins with boundaries. It begins with honoring yourself enough to refuse scars in exchange for silence. You bore the weight of pain, betrayal, and hardship so others could have peace. You carried the fire of hell within you, enduring suffering silently so those around you could breathe easy. You sacrificed your own happiness to uphold the illusion of harmony. But martyrdom is not the answer. You deserve rest, healing, and joy as much as anyone else. You don't have to carry hell alone anymore. It's time to lay down your burdens, claim your heaven, and live fiercely for yourself. Your strength is not measured by how much hell you endure, but by how brightly you rise after it. The fire that burns within you isn't a flicker to be put out. It's a wildfire meant to blaze trails. This fire is the essence of your spirit, raw, uncontrollable, and full of life. It's the force that carried you through darkness when all seemed lost, the same force that made you stand tall when the world tried to push you down. But this fire was never meant to be contained by anyone else's expectations or limits. Too often, you were told to tone it down, to be quieter, gentler, less intense. But the truth is, your intensity is your power. It's what kept you going when others gave up, what fueled your endurance when the pain seemed unbearable. This fire inside you holds the secrets of survival, courage, and unstoppable strength. Trying to dim this fire only suffocates your true self. Every time you hold back your passion, or your anger, or your love, you lose a part of your soul. Embrace the blaze inside. It is your truth, your defiance, your beautiful chaos. You were born to burn brightly, not to smolder quietly in the shadows. Let that fire roar unapologetically, because the world needs your light, your warmth, your relentless spirit, not a watered-down version of it. Betrayal is one of life's cruelest lessons. It arrives unexpectedly, like a shadow creeping in the night, leaving devastation in its wake. You didn't ask for this lesson, but it demanded your attention, and you had no choice but to listen. Each act of betrayal chipped away at your innocence and forced you to confront the harsh realities of human nature. You learned that not everyone is worthy of your heart, and some people will wield your trust like a weapon. But in the midst of that destruction, you found new strength. You discovered how to rebuild the broken pieces of your heart and how to protect what remains without shutting down entirely. Betrayal taught you boundaries, tough, unyielding boundaries that were necessary to protect your soul. It taught you to recognize red flags, to value your own peace above empty promises, and to choose loyalty wisely. Though painful, betrayal forced you to grow beyond the naive versions of yourself. It was a cruel unwanted teacher, but one that shaped you into the fiercely wise and resilient person you are today. Remember, it's not the betrayal itself that defines you, but how you rise after it. Every tear you shed was more than a moment of weakness. It was a river carving out new strength inside you. Those tears weren't just salt water. They were the raw fuel for transformation. You cried when you thought no one was watching, when your heart felt heavy beyond bearing, and when the silence around you grew deafening. But those tears were not signs of defeat. They were the beginnings of rebirth. Tears have a cleansing power, washing away lies you told yourself, illusions you believed, and the weight of too many sacrifices. They open pathways for healing, allowing your pain to flow instead of stagnate. With each tear, you slowly rebuilt the foundation of your soul, stronger, more grounded, and more compassionate. You gave yourself permission to feel deeply, to grieve fully, and to express what words could never capture. This vulnerability was your strength, the unspoken courage that helped you reclaim your humanity. Because the strongest hearts are not those that never break, but those that break and still choose to love. So never be ashamed of your tears. They are rivers that nourish the garden of your resilience.